So here we basically are going to talk about how can we put our own business logics, okay, into the application so that things can be controlled through logic, right? So most of the times you will do that for automating certain stuff, right? And to avoid certain errors. That's basically the objective for using business logics. Now you can write your own logics in Salesforce with the declarative approach, and you can also do it with programming. So programming part is something which we are going to start next week. We are going to look into the declarative approach of it. Okay, how can we control the business logics without any program with drag and drop? Okay, now under business logic there are four things which you can do through declarative. One is for formulas, second is validation rules, third is workflow rules, and fourth is formulas, validations, workflows, and the fourth is approval process. Right. So these four things are there: formulas, validations, workflow rules, and approval processes. Okay. So we'll start with formula. Formula is pretty simple. Anywhere in the data where you think the value of a field depends on some other field and you can define a clear logic for that, you can write a formula there. So instead of doing the manual calculations, you can define a formula. For example, if you have a price field and if you have a tax field, and you know that there is a clear relation between the tax and price, so instead of manually calculating and putting the price tax, you can just define a formula here, and you can say tax equals to, let's say, 10% on price, or something like this. So this is actually going to save your time, and it's also going to reduce that error, scope of error, because if you do it manually there will be errors also, right? So this way there can be a lot of situations where you feel that you need to automatically populate the value of certain fields, and that can be done using formula. So let's go and create a formula and see how it works. So there is a field type called formula field. You might have seen it. All right. So this is what we have. Let's say I want to create a formula on opportunity. In opportunity, I have an amount field. I will calculate the tax based on amount. Right. So you can just go to setup, customize. So you have to create a formula field, the tax field, on opportunity. Opportunity is a standard object, so you just need to go to setup, customize opportunities, and then go and click on the fields. Scroll down and create a new field here. Okay. So field type is going to be formula here. What will be the field type? It will be formula. Then go to next. field name is tax. So you will just create it like any other field you create. And there's one more thing that you have to do. You have to define the formula return type. What's the formula return type? After calculation, what exactly your formula is going to return. It can return number, it can return a text, right? So mine is going to be currency because tax is currency. You also have the option of defining the decimal places, two decimal places or something. You can make it 0 also. Now here we have to enter the formula tax equals to okay. So you have to get the reference field, right? Amount. You get the reference field from here. First of all, make it advanced formula. You will get the reference field from here. Click on insert field. Which field I want to reference? Amount. Insert. Okay. So my tax is going to be 10% of amount, which is like 0.1 into amount. Correct? This is my formula. Right? Now, once you have written the formula here, you have the option of checking syntax. Here you have a button called check syntax. You can click on check syntax to check the syntax of the formula if it is correct or not. If there is any error, it is going to show you if there is any syntax error in your formula. Right now it says no syntax error, which means I am okay to go ahead and save the field. Save. Right. So my formula field is ready, the tax field. See, I've just created this field. Now let's go and check it in an opportunity if the tax field has got created. Just click on any of the opportunities. Okay, do you see the tax field? It's 10% of the amount. Alright, so this is how you can create a formula field, and you can create a formula field to define anything, whatever you want to define. Right, it can be something as simple as doing these numeric calculations. It can be something like something which has conditions defined instead of uh, a straightforward formula like 10% of price. You could have had some conditions into it. Let's say if the amount is more than a certain amount, then the tax is going to be 20%. If it is less than a certain amount, then tax is going to be 10%, right? So there you will need to use uh, an if condition in the formula, right? So let's say here we have a logic that if the amount is more than 100,000, if the amount is more than 100,000, then the tax will be 20% of that. And if it is less than 100,000, then it's going to be 10% of the amount. That's for putting this formula, you have to use an if condition. So to do that, let's just go to the same formula field, setup, customize opportunities fields. This time you don't need to create a field because you have already created the field. All that you have to do is just go to the same field and edit that field. So let me go and edit the tax field. So we have to edit the formula here. 0.1 into amount. Okay. What we'll need to do? We'll need to put the if condition here. Okay. You will get the if condition here in the functions. Here all the functions are listed. I'm looking for a logical function if. Okay. So this is the structure of my if function. You should write the logical test here. What is the logical test? If amount is greater than 100,000, tax should be 20%, which means tax is equal to 0.2 into amount. Else, if it's not 100,000, then tax should be 10%. So if value is false, then the tax should be 0.1 into amount. Got it? Check syntax. No syntax error. Now you can go ahead and save it. So now if you enter an amount which is more than 100,000, your tax will be 20% of the amount, otherwise your tax will be 10% of the amount. So that's how it is, right? So this ways you can put a lot of functions to create your formulas and automatically calculate the values, right? So there are so many of them available here: date time functions, logical functions, mathematical functions, text functions. Got it? Save it. Now if you go to an opportunity where the amount is more than 100,000, you will see the tax calculated is 20%. This is also 100,000. Let me increase it to 120. Fine. So it becomes 24,000. Here, right. So this is how we can put formulas, and this formulas can actually help you reduce a lot of manual work by the help of these automations. I'll give you a simple scenario. Think about it. There's a company which is dealing with different segments of clients and accounts. Now they just want to make sure that whenever they are entering an account into the system, they categorize the account as an A category, B category, or C category. Okay, and they have their own criteria of defining the category A account. Let's say any company which has an annual revenue of more than 1 million is category A account, right? So they just want to make sure that all the accounts which are getting into the system are categorized. Now, how will we do? How will they do that? One, they can manually do it while entering an account. Every time they should go and check what is the revenue of the account and which industry it belongs to, how many employees, and then they should manually categorize the account into A or B or C, right? The other option is they can just define a formula that if the account revenue is this much and number of employees is these many, then mark it as a category A account. So this category thing can be a formula field. Got it? So this way, a lot of business scenarios are there where you feel that there is a clear logic for populating the value of a field. You can use a formula, and you can save a lot of manual time. Right? Okay. Let me know if we have any questions on formulas. Okay. Um, I think Prem has a question, says, do we have list of all the functions or something like that for reference? Right. Now, the normal mathematic formulas are pretty simple, multiplying and all that stuff. But there are some functions also which are available. So if you want to have a look into all the functions, and if you want to understand, um, the reference point will be when you go to the formula field. Go to customize, opportunities, fields. Then go to the same formula field. On the tax field, click on edit. See, once you are on this page, you can click on operators and functions. This will open a window for you where you will have list of all the functions and operators. Operators, I am pretty sure you guys understand, but functions are all listed here. But I would not suggest you, because there are a lot of functions. So see, all your date functions. See, date value. You can click on any of the function and go to the detail of that function, and it will show it to you with an example how to use that function. All right, how it can be used, definition of it, and all. So all the functions are listed here. This is the link. All right. I would not suggest that you go through all the functions at once. Use this link as a reference point. Hi, can you guys hear me? Hello, am I audible? Okay. Praveen said he is not able to hear. Praveen, you are able to hear me? I think some problem with his internet. All right. So don't try to go through all the functions, because you will end up confusing yourself a lot. Try to understand the concept of 10 to 15 functions. That's more than enough for you. And at a later point of time, whenever you are writing a function and you feel the requirement, then use this. Okay. So this needs to be used as a dictionary. So the way you never take a dictionary and start learning all the words, you use that as a reference point. So the same way this should be used as a reference point, right? Okay. Now coming to the next concept, that is validation rules. Formula is basically a field. Validation rule is a rule. Okay. You can define a rule to validate data. Validate data before it enters the database. Very simple. You can define rules to validate, to check the data before the data can get into the database. Okay. Why is it important? It's important so that incorrect data does not get into the system. Sometimes you want to make sure that the correct information is also only getting into the database, right? And it can be, anything. It can be as simple as you want to put a restriction on some field, let's say opportunity amount. It cannot be less than 10,000, and it cannot be more than uh, 1 million, for example. Now you can put a validation rule and say that if anyone is entering an opportunity amount less than 10,000, please throw a validation error and don't accept that value. Fine. So that's a validation rule, right? Or in the opportunity you have a close date, right? There's a close date field. You want to put a validation rule saying that the close date should not be today's date. So anyone entering the close date should not be today's date, or should not be before today. It should be only after today, just to ensure that people are not entering the opportunity after the opportunity has got closed. Okay. So that can be a validation rule. So how do you define a validation rule? To define validation rule, again you have to go to setup, customize, and then go to opportunities. Under opportunities, you will have the validation rules. Right. New rule we have to define. See, validation rule helps you improve data quality by preventing users from saving incorrect data. So basically what you are trying to do, wherever you feel that there is a scope of people entering incorrect data, you can put a validation rule and it will check the quality of the data or the information which is being saved. If there is any problem with that, it will not allow the record to be saved. Um, Give it a name. You have to make the validation rule active or inactive. Active, if you make it active, then it's going to work. If you keep it inactive, it will not work. So sometimes what happens, you create a validation rule, but you don't want to activate it right now. In that case, keep it inactive. But I want it to be active, so we'll make it active. Now this is where you have to write your validation rule. So there are two parts for your validation rule. Your rule has two parts. One is error condition. Okay, what condition should return error, and the other is error message. What error message should be? So pretty simple. Like if I say opportunity amount cannot be less than 10,000. So my error condition is amount less than 10,000. Right? And error message can be whatever you want to put. So this is my condition. Let me take the condition and put the condition here. Okay. And this is the error message. Right. So error condition, error message to check. Error condition is more like a formula only. So that's the reason why you have the functions and everything. To define the error condition, you will use the formula syntax only. Now, in case you have a slightly longer condition written here, you might want to check the syntax error. You can check it from here. Error message. Where do you want your error message to be displayed? The location. On top of the page or beside a field. Okay. So you can display the error message beside a particular field, because this is the error message for amount. So let me display it beside amount field. Okay. And save. Okay. Now, if you try to create any opportunity which has an amount less than 10,000, or if you try to update an opportunity to an amount less than 10,000, you're gonna get an error. Click on this. Amount 8,000. See, now it's accepting any close date, right? You can write a validation for this also. Now I've put a close date which is 22nd December, whereas the date today is 23rd. So you can put a logic there also. See, the error. Your amount cannot be less than 10,000. Correct? Alright. You want to put a validation condition for this also? Closed it. So just go to the same validation rule. And I have to put an OR logic here. So OR is again a function here. I want to check two criteria, right? If amount is less than 10,000 or if the close date. Okay. So if you don't know what exactly close date spelling is, or how it is defined there, use insert field. You will get the close date. Okay. Or if close date is less than today, check syntax. Today does not exist. Does this exist? Yes. So now I have put two conditions and I have put an OR criteria here. So if this or this is true, then it should throw this error message. Save it. Go to opportunities. Let's create a new one. Amount is 12,000, which is more than 10,000. So that should not be a problem. But I am putting a date which is 21st December, which is less than today's date. Let us save it. See, it still throws error. Why is this throwing the same error? Because that's what you have defined there. And the location for the error you have defined here. Usually you should try and display your errors on the top of the page here. So there was an option of selecting top of the page, right? So usually you should try and display your errors on top of the page. Alright. So that's how your validation rule will work. And then if you don't want this validation rule to work for some time, let's say you have defined this logic, okay, that close date cannot be uh, before today's date. So this is a validation rule. It will not allow you to insert any data with a close date which is less than 23rd December. Now, if you have a requirement, you have a small exception that this needs to be done because there is some pending data which was not entered. If that kind of a situation is there, then how will you deal with that? Some backdated information is there and you have to enter it into the system, but your validation rule will not allow you to do that. Then the best thing is turn off the validation rule for some time because sometimes you will have that exceptional requirement of entering the data or editing the data, or if you are updating some records. So while you are updating those records, maybe for some other value, not for the date and amount, some other value is being updated, which means again those records are getting updated into the database, but the date remains same, the backdated thing. At that time, you should just go and deactivate the validation rule for some time, perform your operation, whatever data update or whatever you want to do, and then again go back and reactivate your validation rule. So go to the validation rule under opportunity. Okay. All right. Go to validation rule under opportunity. Click on edit and deactivate it. Now this validation rule will not work. Okay, I have deactivated it. So anytime you feel that you have some work to do and your validation is actually causing a problem for that, just deactivate it for some time. Perform that data updation or whatever operation you are doing, perform that and then again go ahead and activate it. Right? Is that clear? Let me know if there is any question or doubt here. Validation rule. Very simple. Okay. Now we come to the workflow rule. Okay. What's a workflow rule? Workflow rule is basically there's also a rule which you can define to automate some task. Validation rule is just checking the data. It's just validating the data. But workflow rule can actually help you define certain workflow and it can help you automate some task. Okay. So what kind of task can be done using workflow? You can send automated email. You can send automated email. You can assign a task to a user automatically. You can update a field automatically. You can send an outbound message. Okay. So you can send an email, you can assign task to user, you can update field, you can send an outbound message. So this is what you can do with your workflow rule. These are the tasks which can be done, right? So for example, you have a condition that every time a new contact is created and if it has an email ID, you want to send a welcome email to the contact. That's something which your workflow rule can do. Or if you have a criteria that every time a contact is created which does not have an email ID, you want to send an email to the owner of the contact, that your contact does not have an email ID, something like that, right? So this kind of, or you want to assign a task to the contact owner saying that please find the email ID of the contact because it does not have an email ID. So these things can be automated using workflow rule. Okay. It will again help you save a lot of time for your users and users. The work that they usually will be doing manually, sending emails, assigning tasks to the other users, updating fields. These things all can be automated using workflow rules. Right. So it's very simple defining a workflow rule. Here you just have to work with a few questions. Question number one, which object you want to define the rule for? Okay, do you want to define the rule for contact or account or opportunity or which other object? Okay, what is the criteria to initiate the rule? Okay, what is your rule criteria? What is your evaluation criteria? And what is the action that you have to do? Okay, first thing, which object you want to define the rule on? What is your rule criteria? What criteria should be met to initiate the workflow rule actions? I'm saying send an email, but send an email when? What criteria should be met? Okay, that's the rule criteria. Evaluation criteria is basically when do you want the rule criteria to be evaluated? Right, evaluation criteria is when do you want the rule criteria to be evaluated? Do you want this to be evaluated when a new record is created, or do you want a rule to be evaluated when an existing record is being updated? So when exactly you want the rule criteria to be evaluated? That's the evaluation criteria. Fine. And then there is action. Then what if action you actually want to perform? So it can be anything like send an email, update the feed. So what do you want to do? If the criteria is met, then what should your workflow will do? That's what you will define in the action, right? So so let me take this example which I was talking about. Every time you receive a new contact is entered into the system. If it has email ID, if email is available, send an email. Okay, so let's say this is my workflow rule requirement. So let's break it into these things. This is the scenario, this is the requirement. Now let's break the requirement into these things. Answer to these questions. Which object are we talking about? Contact. What is my rule criteria? Email. What is the rule criteria? Anyone? What should be the rule criteria?
When new contact created.
No.
If email is available.
Email is available. What is evaluation criteria?
New contact.
Yes, new contact. So the rule will be evaluated when a new contact created. What will be evaluated? It will check if the email is available. If the email is available, then what will it do? That's it. Okay. So even if there is the most difficult requirement of the world, if you try to break it into this, you will not get confused anyway. Otherwise, you might end up, confusing yourself. What should I do? What criteria and all that stuff. Just ask yourself these 4 questions. Which object are we talking about? What is the rule criteria? What is the evaluation criteria? What action do I want to do? That's it. Now, defining workflow rule is going to be very simple now, since we have broken it into small questions. Where do you create the workflow rule? Go to setup, create, workflow and approvals. So this is where you have to go. Setup, create, workflow and approvals. Click on workflow rules. Click on continue. Say new rule. So contact, go to next. Rule name can be anything. New contact rule. Okay. So here you will see evaluation criteria and rule criteria. Evaluation criteria, you have three options. When new record is created, uh, when a new record is created and every time it's edited, and third is when a new record is created and any time it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. Got it? So we are going to use the created one, the first option. What is my rule criteria? Okay, you can choose the rule criteria using these options, or you can write a formula also to evaluate your rule. So email not equals to none. That kind of formula can also be written here. Okay, or you can use this email not equal to none. Fine. Save and next. Now this is where you have to specify the action. Okay, so after you have defined the object, the rule criteria and the evaluation criteria, all that you have to do is you have to define the action here. Okay, what action you want to do. Do you want to do immediate action or a time dependent action? Okay, immediate action means something that you want to do immediately. The moment record got saved, immediately you want to do something. That's immediate action. Time dependent action is where you want the action to be delayed by a certain time. For example, if the record got saved now, you want to send an email after 2 hours. Okay, you can have any that sort of logic. So in case you want to define a time dependent action, then you have to add a time trigger. Okay, and you have to, in the time trigger, you will define how much you want to delay it. Or if you just want to do an immediate action, just go ahead and define your action. So what is the action? Email alert. Right, you can put an email alert here. Okay, you have the option of picking the email template. Under setup communication templates, there's something called email template. Okay, you can define your email templates. Since I'm talking about automated email, so before I can actually send an automated email, I have to create an email template, right? What exactly I want to write in that email, what will be the subject line and all that stuff. So you have the option of creating your own email templates. You can create your own email templates here. If you go to email templates, there are some dummy email templates which are already created, and you can always click on a new template to create your own template, right? So if you want HTML or if you want a normal text email template, you can go to the email template and create it. Put the subject line and all that stuff. What will be the subject line, what will be the body, what will be the name of the email template. Make it available for use. Go to save. So your email template got created basically. So while you're defining this email action, you have to select which email template you want to use. See, this is the one that you created and these are the default ones. Let me use the one that you just created. Okay. Now select the recipient. Who is the person who's gonna receive the email? So in our case, who is gonna receive the email? Who is the receiver of the email? Who will receive the email? Hmm? Look into this criteria and say who is going to be the recipient of the email.
User who is having mail ID.
User
Who's
or
having mail ID.
user or contact?
Contact out.
Contact.
Contact.
Okay. So in Salesforce, a user and contact, these two things
Are
make
different. Yeah.
completely different sense. Okay. So
Yeah.
the contact whose email ID is given, right? That contact should receive, right? So basically, we want to send it to the email field in the contact table. Correct. So here by default you are seeing user. Definitely, I don't want to send it to the user. If you want to send it to any of the user, then you could have selected this, but I do not want to do that. So I will select it from the email field. All right. I want to send it to the email field in that object. So select email field. There's only one email field here, email ID. So it should be sent to that email ID. You have an option of putting some additional emails here. You can copy up to 5 email IDs. So these people will be copied on the email in case you want to do that. Okay. And you just can go ahead and say save. Right. Your workflow rule is ready. You have defined the criteria, you have defined the evaluation criteria, and you have defined the action as well. Click on done and then go ahead and activate the rule. Go ahead and activate the rule. Now the rule is activated. Till the time you do not activate it, the rule is not going to work. Let me create a new contact and see if my workflow rule is working. Okay, the email will be sent to email which is provided, correct? Yeah, so let me save it. So ideally now I should receive an email with that hi hello thing, the email template that we created. Let me check if I've received. Yes, here it is. See the email? Hello, how are you? So this is the email template that we defined and I just received this email. Got it? So this is how simple it is to control things through workflow rules, right? Automating actions. Let me know if anyone has a question or doubt on this.